I want winners. I want people that want to win.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
You got to put your money where your mouth is, Pete.
It's not gambling advice. We welcome on Andrew Caley, senior betting analyst for covers.com. Andrew, you cover everything under the sun. You're betting on NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, but we really want to talk to you about the MLB. And you are, of course, a Blue Jays fan too. So thank you for joining us. And how are you feeling about your Blue Jays so far?
Thanks for having me, for starters. Really excited to talk some baseball with you guys. I am cautiously optimistic, I guess is the best way to say it. I love what they have done. On paper, they should be fantastic, but they're the betting favorites to win the American League at a lot of sports books now, and that makes me incredibly nervous because it's an incredibly tough division in the American League East. There are 4 teams who have a realistic chance of winning it. The Rays, Red Sox, Yankees, Blue Jays, all 91 plus wins, and all tried to improve, even though the Rays do it in ways that might be a little unconventional, but like I'm not going to doubt them at this point. They just keep they do things which I find questionable all the time, and they keep having success. So I'm not gonna question their ways yet. But I like what I've seen out of Vladdy and Bo, particularly when it comes to taking balls the opposite way early on in the season. The depth of the lineup is what is really impressive. They just started a series with the Yankees on Monday night, and everyone had a terrible night except for Santiago Espinal and George Springer, and they won the game. And it's 1 through 9 for them. It's a very deep lineup, and obviously the starting pitching has been questionable at this point. Before Manoah took the mound there the other night, I think Jose Barrios would be okay. A little cautious about Kevin Gossman. They gave him a lot of money, but my big thing with him is he only has 2 pitches. And he had not great success in the American League East before he went out west. And on top of that, unless Ryu is relocating that fastball, he's lost more velocity on it, which isn't great. I think he was topping out at like 89 miles per hour in his first start, which is a little shaky. If he's not hitting the inside quarters with that fastball, he's gonna have some issues there. So keeping an eye on the starting pitching is what I'm gonna do early on.
I'm actually most excited to see Yusei Kikuchi. So he pitches tonight against the Yankees. I think he could be an almost better Hyunjin Ryu, right? Hyunjin Ryu, obviously the stuff is not there anymore. What are you most excited about seeing with Yusei Kikuchi?
I'm excited to see what Pete Walker can do. This is what everybody's talking about. We get him at a pretty good deal. A former All-Star, obviously, but his numbers did crater a bit in the second half of the season. But he's got a really live fastball, right? He can touch 96 with that fastball, even 97 at times. If he controls it, that's great. His biggest problem pitch right now is his cutter. He uses it a lot, but it just doesn't cut a whole lot, or it didn't cut a whole lot last year. And then you just get this kind of flat BP fastball that guys hit around. If he can, I don't know what Pete Walker is going to do. He tends to simplify things for guys. Maybe it's eliminating the cutter, or focusing more on the slider and locating that, because he needs to locate that well to be effective tonight as well. But I'm excited to see if he can locate the fastball and what the actual just game plan is going on, because we saw what happened with Robbie Ray. He was having some terrible years in the desert before heading over to Pete Walker, and now he's the defending American League Cy Young Award winner. And even Steven Matz had a solid season, and he parlayed that into a lucrative deal with the Cardinals this offseason. So I'm excited to see what the game plan is with Kikuchi in regards to his pitches heading into this matchup.
I really like that you talked about Pete Walker, because he really does have a crazy ability to turn a mediocre-ish to maybe an above average pitcher into a great pitcher. And it'll be interesting to see if he can do that with Kikuchi, because Kikuchi is a guy who throws 95 miles an hour and can be really good. But if you look at his second half, he's one of the reasons why the Mariners didn't end up making the playoffs. He went 1-6. He had an ERA over 6, just couldn't put it all together. But what I'm really excited to talk to you today about, Andrew, is gambling, because we talked about how loaded this AL East is. I mean, you got 4 horsemen at the top. People want to kind of push the Red Sox out of that top 3. I'm not ready to do that. They've proved that they are too good to do so. So we're going to get into the MVP discussion, how we bet futures, and then how we bet some props and how we bet the individual game. But I really want to ask you about this division when we're betting over under win totals, because we also gave ours. But when you're handicapping these first 4 teams, how do you do it? I guess is the best way for me to ask that question.
Oh, it's a tough question. You have to really break down each team's strengths and weaknesses, and try to find the best number available for each team. Like the Jays had the highest number going into the season. I believe it was 92.5 before the season started. And it just made, as a Jays fan, it made me uncomfortable. They haven't had that many wins in a long time. They only went over, even when they made the playoffs in 2016, I believe they were the second time in 2016 as a wild card. I believe they only had 91 wins as well. So 92 and a half is a big number. It's a tight division. So the team I looked immediately at was the Red Sox, because they had the lowest number of the bunch, I believe, at 86 and a half. I don't have the number in front of me.
Might have been 85 and a half. It was low.
85 and a half. And that's the most reasonable number for me. All of these teams are very similar. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. The Jays they all have great offenses. That's the thing. And they can all get hot at times. But I expect them to take advantage of maybe not this division, but the rest of the American League, especially the Central. We'll see what happens with the Mariners and the Angels this year. It's a little touch and go with the Angels every year, I find. But when it comes to this division, I think there's enough offense in here that we're not going to see like someone have a too bad of a slump. Like all of these offenses besides the Rays, without the big names, but they still find a way to score, obviously. But I would just went to the lowest number, and that's the Red Sox for me. And I like that number the best because I think these teams are a lot closer than those numbers probably say.
And then real quick, before we get into the MVP favorites, obviously we just talked about the over under win totals, but in terms of who you have to win the division, who are you going with? The Blue Jays are around, plus 180, plus 200. The Yankees were around there as well, plus 250, plus 300. Red Sox were like plus 500, way out there. And the Rays too, surprisingly, I think we're given the third best odds to win the division. And we somewhat thought that was kind of strange because the Rays have showed that they can overproduce. But I just wanted to get your feelings and thoughts there.
I think the Rays are the best value. You can still get them at about plus 350 to win the division, and they started off 3-0. Obviously, playing the Orioles in your first series is going to help that a lot. I think the Orioles have 6 runs at this point of the season. Not another great year coming up for Baltimore. That was one of my favorite regular season win totals, under theirs of 62 and a half, I believe it was, because that's a win improvement of 11 games. And I think they do have some nice pieces, and maybe the light at the end of the tunnel is kind of like way out there, but it's there a bit. The farm system's getting a little better, but an 11 win improvement for this Orioles team seemed ludicrous. But the best value is with the Rays. They're the 2-time defending division champions, and like we just mentioned a few times here, they do things unconventionally. They just traded Austin Meadows before the season, and you think it was like, oh, like maybe it was time to move on, but the guy's only 25 still, and he's off to a great start with the Tigers. But obviously there's something in the Rays numbers somewhere that says this is the trade to make at this time for this guy. And like I said, I'll never fully understand it, I bet, unless you're actually in that front office. But like I said, not going to doubt them. And so at plus 350, that was one of my better bets in that in division betting this year anyway. And I did a Blue Jays preview this season, a betting preview, and I said, if you were going to make a bet for their futures, I would have said take them to win the division at plus 180 or so, as opposed to taking over their win total of 92 and a half, because if they're going 93 wins or more, you can reasonably expect them to win the division. So I'd much rather take that value with them.
And I really like how you made that distinction there between the over-under win total and them winning the division. And I think that's interesting when we talk about the MVP and the Cy Young race and the Rookie of the Year race, because I'm not an idiot. I can see that Shohei Ohtani is the greatest player I've ever seen touch dirt, that he can hit with the best of them and he can pitch with the best of them. But at plus 400, that's not the odds that I want, especially because there's no precedent there for him doing it consecutive years in a row. But if you put a gun to my head and said, who do you think is going to be the MVP? If you're wrong, you die. I'm probably picking Ohtani, but that doesn't mean I want to gamble on Ohtani. So how do you distinguish between finding betting lines with value versus picking who you think realistically should win the MVP? Because I struggle with that before every season.
It's a hard thing to do because you're right. We're seeing Shohei do stuff that nobody's done since Babe Ruth, sort of thing. And he's our generation's Babe Ruth, and we get to watch him. And I feel like I get thrilled to watch him. Like, I live in the Atlantic time zone, which is even ahead of Eastern time zone, but I'm up watching Angels games just so I can watch that guy play. It's incredible. But when it comes to futures bets like MVP and Cy Young, it's all about finding the mix of opportunity with the value right now. So, and like we said, all the value is gone with Shohei Ohtani. He's plus 400, plus even plus 350 now. I can see at some places. He's going to be hammered because he had that amazing season. It's going to be so popular. And so you can bet, I'm sure. And that's probably the safest bet to make. I 100% agree with you because he's pitching and hitting and doing both extremely well.
Pretty cool.
It's very, very cool stuff. But you don't want to hope for an injury, but there is other factors that can contribute to. You have to kind of think your way around how is Shohei not going to win this award. One is the return of Mike Trout, and if he can stay healthy all year, and we get a little bit of value on Mike Trout at plus 500 to plus 600 right now, which is once again not great value for a futures bet, which you're investing. This is the other thing. Baseball is a very long season. A lot of people don't like investing their money for huge amounts of time, and you have to be prepared for that. One thing I do to suggest when you're doing that is set aside a part of your bankroll specifically just for futures bets, and that's where it is, and you don't really worry about it, and hopefully you come away with a little bit of winnings at the end of the season. But separating it is one way I like to kind of like make I'm not worry about investing that money for extended periods of time. But in this season with American League MVP, I think we've already lost the value on the guy I think was the best value heading into the season, and that's Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins. He's already started for the season really well, and it's for him, it's opportunity, right? Like he if he's on the field, his ceiling is arguably best player in baseball. Can I say?
You can say that. Just pointing out earlier, best player in baseball. He just has that level of talent. Talk about offense. Like in his last 103 games, he has 35 home runs, 21 defensive runs saved, and a 159 OPS plus. So he has more defensive runs saved in his last 103 games than Carlos Correa, but he has 45 plus home run power if he plays a full 162. We haven't seen players like this that often, and we won't see players like this come up every so often.
So unfortunately, people have noticed this already within the first week of the season, because I think it was even just at the beginning of April, you could get him at 25, 30 to 1 to win MVP. And now he's more like 10 to 1. So we might have to go scraping a little further down the barrel if you want to find the value at this time. I still like him at the 10 to 1, but the MVP still has a narrative around it as well.
Yeah.
So generally, unless for years when it was just like, well, Mike Trout is obviously the most dominant player in the AL, and we're just going to give it to him no matter how many 81 win seasons the Angels have. And but I think it's still, like I said, there's still a little bit of narrative around it. You want the team to be a somewhat successful team. And the other thing is, now with 6 teams making the playoffs this season, more teams are going to be in contention for longer. But we mentioned that division, a guy like Rafael Devers, I think, from the Boston Red Sox at about 22 to 1. He presents an interesting value. He does it all. He's a pretty solid defender. He can put up some big numbers at Fenway Park. And another one to look at, I think, a little further down the board, it might be Alex Bregman at 50 to 1 for the Houston Astros. They still are still favorites to win that division out west, despite a lot of roster turnover there. But they're another team that not as much as the Rays, but still do a decent job of scouting young talent and getting that talent up to major league readiness. But now Bregman's the guy there. Like obviously Altuve's still there, but Bregman's their best player now, and he's been hampered by injuries a bit the last couple of seasons, but now he's fully healthy, and he's had some MVP-esque seasons in the past. So to get him at 50-1 for a team that could win that division and win 90 plus games against this season, I think is pretty good value.
Andrew, you brought up the narrative factor with the MVP award, and historically it's gone to a player that has been on a winning team. And I think the NL MVP kind of presents an interesting challenge because you have Juan Soto, who for all intents and purposes is the best hitter in baseball right now, up there with Trout, seemingly. And then behind him, you have Ronald Acuna Jr., who's going to be out for the first month. You have, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, all playing on the same team. And then Tatis is hurt. So it's kind of a tough go of it because Soto plus 300, the value isn't great. Who do you like in the NL?
In the NL, I want to take one of the Dodgers, but it's such a dart throw with them and how the season will go. It could be any one of them. Mookie Betts is still one of my favorite players in baseball. But in the NL right now, a narrative for me, I think the Brewers are a little underrated. Obviously, off to a bit of a rocky start this season, but I think they win the NL Central. And I love getting Christian Yelich at 30-1 to win it. This is a former MVP. Arguably, he's followed that up with an even better season and didn't win the MVP. But obviously, the last two seasons have been a little. He's gone a little bit the way of Cody Bellinger, but not that far off the cliff, obviously. But 30-1 seems like really good value for a team I think is going to win a division. He's an MVP caliber player. I just really like you said, he does it all for them, and he'll be the leader of that offense again, I think, this year.
I think he has a chance to be. The only problem is the Brewers offense so far is putrid. They can't hit the Orioles.
Not hitting the Orioles is not a good sign.
Yeah, when you don't hit Justin Steele or Bruce Zimmerman, no offense to those two guys, but you have problems, and that's serious. But Christian Yelich could be that guy. When we look at the American League Cy Young, it seems easy, but at the same time, it seems really difficult because the two guys at the top in Shane Bieber and Garrett Cole, first start doesn't look great. He gave up a couple runs in the first inning, then settled in. Bieber, his velocity was down. The overall stat line looked fine, 4 2/3, 1 run, but that was against the Kansas City Royals offense. And again, that velocity just wasn't 94 to 96. It was closer to 90, 91. But when you look at the rest of the AL, it's hard to really find a starting pitcher that you love at the value more than Garrett Cole or Shane Bieber. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you see someone outside of those two guys that you like more, or are you sticking with either Bieber or Cole?
Bieber's my favorite just because I love his pitch arsenal. I love watching that guy pitch. It's so much fun. But I'll be a bit of a homer here. And I just saw him pitch last night, and I couldn't find him on the board before this game started. But then he went out and shut out the Yankees over 6 innings, giving up just one soft little base hit to Joey Gallo. And that's my guy, Alek Manoah. He's now on the board at 25-1 to win the Cy Young. He did have some issues last night. He's very young still, obviously, and I believe it was the 4th or 5th inning when he just completely lost the zone. He might just lost his release point, and he couldn't figure it out. Like, they went out to talk to him, and he just nope. He eventually got out of the inning. I believe that was the inning where Bo Bichette made a great defensive play, which I've never seen him do before, which was shocking in his own right. Every time Bo Bichette goes down to make a play on a ground ball, I get nervous because he's a little wild at times, just like his swing is. But I really like the tools that Alek Manoah brings to the table. He obviously has great stuff. A devastating slider. He can hit 97 with his fastball, and he's a competitor. Like, he loves playing at Yankee Stadium for some reason. He loves being in those big moments. I know he rubs a lot of people the wrong way too, but maybe that even, since people don't like him, they won't pick him to win Cy Young, and we can get him at plus 25-1 for a little while longer.
Yeah, Peter and I always talk about, we love guys that get weak contact and get whiffs. And Alek Manoah does both those so well. I could see him putting in a really, really solid season this year. I really like that pick. The NL Cy Young race is so different than the AL Cy Young, right? you have Garrett Cole, you have Shane Bieber, and those are the top two. And below that, it's kind of a dart throw. It's a dart throw of its own in the NL because you have like 12 guys that really could realistically win this award. Who do you like in the NL?
I'm a DeGrom guy through and through, and I'm so disheartened that we're not going to see him for a full season this year, and to the point where I'd rather bet DeGrom to win MVP in the National League more than I would to win Cy Young. For me, it's a really, really tough question. Like you said, it's 12 guys that could realistically win it, but I think my favorite right now might be Carlos Rodon out in San Francisco. Really hitter-friendly park in San Francisco. He bet on himself a couple of years ago when things weren't looking well. He had a great year with Chicago last year, and now I think he's in a really great situation in San Francisco. He had a very good, strong debut. But and once again, I think the Giants are going to surprise people again this year by winning more games than people expect them to. I guess they're kind of like Rays West right now. When it comes to their mentality with analytics and stuff like that. But I really like Rodon at 15-1 there. The Brewers pitchers, it's always like, which one is it going to be? And then you can split a vote. I want to like Zach Wheeler, but there's still something about him that I don't entirely trust. Scherzer is a little year older. Among the favorites, maybe it's Walker Buehler for me. Maybe this is his year. He could have a very good year for the Dodgers. So at about 10-1, that's not a bad play as well.
Walker Buehler is my preseason pick. I love that pick. I think he's going to shove this year. And it's funny, comparing the National League Cy Young race, I kind of compare it to the American League Rookie of the Year race because there are so many good pitchers in the National League and there are so many good rookies in the American League. This crop of rookies is some of the most talented that we've seen in the past couple of years, even in the past decade, with Bobby Witt Jr., my personal pick, Spencer Torkelson. Now we have Julio Rodriguez. Adley Rutschman is down with a tricep injury to start the year, but he should be up as soon as he's healthy. This crop is incredible. So I'm really curious how you came to your pick. Do you look a lot at their minor league statistics? Do you look at projection systems when it comes to these rookies? Do you fall further into, as long as this guy has more opportunity, I like him better? For example, I have a guy like Kevin Smith as my dark horse because the A's don't have any good players, and he's now a rookie who even if he hits 100 in his first 2 months, they're going to allow him to play shortstop. So that amount of run could accumulate in some counting numbers. There go giving him the Rookie of the Year. So I'm very curious how you come to your Rookie of the Year pick in the AL.
Once again, it's opportunity is a big part of that here. You mentioned Torkelson. I like him a lot too, but they've just made some moves to make it feel like they think they can be competitive maybe in the AL Central. They also have Riley Green too, who could come up and split some Rookie of the Year votes there as well. It's really tough. Like you said, a lot of great guys. I'm a Julio Rodriguez guy, but when it comes to making these picks, I really think I don't go on minor league stats a whole lot because the major league pitching game is just a completely different beast, and you really need to get those major league at bats or innings to really get a feel for that level of play. I like Rodriguez because I'm kind of like on the Mariners bandwagon a little bit this year. I really think he can contribute. He does it all. He projects to be a middle of the order guy with solid power, and he has got a decent glove. And I really think he could be an impact player on a team who I expect to be an outside contender for this American League West division again this year. So for me, it's Rodriguez to the Mariners, and I really like his chances there this year.
And before we quickly move on to the National League, I feel like it would be remiss of us to not mention the rookie that's absolutely taking the league by storm currently. That's Stephen Kwan on the Cleveland Guardians. He's a guy who's gone on base 15 times in his first 4 games. That's the first time since 1901. So my question is, his odds at the beginning of the year were at plus 6,500. We even grabbed it as one of our dark horse Rookie of the Year. You know, he was a guy who we really liked coming in the minor leagues. We just really liked him as a bat. kind of compare him to Michael Brantley in a way. At plus 6,500, that was one of my dark horse AL Rookie of the Year picks. Also Kevin Smith, but we'll see what Kevin Smith actually does. But Stephen Kwan has now, his odds have dropped to plus 600. That's where I say everyone's asking, hey, do I bet on this? Do I bet on this? Like, this is enough value. That to me has now gone into a realm where I'm like, but then again, I did bet on Spencer Torkelson plus 450. So I kind of wanted to hear your opinion on where you go with Stephen Kwan and how you compare it to the rest of the league.
It's been very impressive. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I saw this great quote of him, I think yesterday or the day before, and he was just like, when I was a kid, I hated striking out. It made me cry, and then I decided I didn't want to cry anymore, so I just stopped striking out. I was like, wow, I wish I could have been good enough to say I am no longer going to strike out and make my way to a major league roster. That would have been a nice thing to experience. But like you said, he's got a very, very smooth swing. But the baseball season, and this is advice for just the baseball season in general. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're going to have fluctuations in seasons. Nobody's going to be hot for an entire season. Nobody's going to be cold for an entire season. Well, maybe you are if you're Cody Bellinger, but lots of things can change over a 6-7 month season. And as you mentioned it, you've lost almost 100% of the value on Kwan at this point. So if you like him, I'd say wait for a slump and then get him to then bet him again if you really like him, because you've lost out on the best number at this point. But he'll probably go through a point this season where he's not looking like he is right now. So you wait for that, and maybe you get a little better value moving forward at some point.
So now moving on over to the NL Rookie of the Year race. If Peter and I talked about this one, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and we were really set on two guys. It was Seiya Suzuki, who's coming over from Japan, almost a veteran at this point, right? A little older than these guys. And then it's O'Neal Cruz of the Pirates, who's the hard-hitting shortstop, who's 6'7". But now there's another like 3 or 4 guys that have kind of entered their name into this hat. You have Hunter Green, who just shoved for the Reds. You have Bryson Stott, who's now getting a ton of playing time for the Phillies. And even beyond that, Mackenzie Gore looks like he could come up with Snell being hurt. You have Nick Lodolo making his debut, I believe today, the day that this episode releases. So like right now, there's still, 6 guys that could win this race. Who do you like in this race?
I'm going to go a little off the board here. I'm going to go with CJ Abrams from the Padres. I think he's good enough that he's going to come up and he's going to push Tatis to the outfield once he comes back. I guess I could say that. That's what I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that take right now. But he's got a lot of potential. He's got a solid bat, looks like right now. I like that roster in general, and I think there's a chance for success for him to kind of blossom there. And there's not a lot of pressure on him as well in that lineup. Obviously, getting regular at bats could be an issue moving forward, depending on which way they go. But for me, I really like what I'm seeing with Abrams right now.
Are you at all concerned that when Fernando Tatis Jr. returns from his fractured wrist injury that he suffered after a motorcycle accident, do you feel nervous that CJ Abrams could then get sent down after, even if he does have a good start to the season?
Sure, and that's a risk, obviously. The Padres have gone about saying that they will explore all options, sort of things, when it comes to when it comes to where they will play him, which I found very shocking at first when he first came out. I was like, this guy's just going to be shortstop forever, and then they started playing him in center field. I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting strategy, I guess. But they want to get as many bats in the lineup as possible. And if he hits, he'll stay up, and we probably won't get better value than we're getting right now with him.
So you mentioned before that the futures betting market is a fluid market, right? Stephen Kwan's odds moved greatly. How do you prepare for the long season? And in terms of bankroll, right? Are you holding aside a certain amount of bankroll so that in July, like Harper last year, right? He was way down in the MVP odds, came roaring back to win that NL MVP. Do you keep a certain amount of bankroll available for you to basically do live futures bets throughout the season?
Yeah, like I said, I make a habit of separating my futures bankrolls, but from my regular bankroll, I would say. And I won't vary too much during the season, but like you said, baseball is a long season and it's a fluid market. There's opportunity to be had. I believe I put in a bet on Vlad Jr. to win MVP last year at about I think it was like 20-1 in like May or something like that, and then it was obviously he didn't win it, but that'll change quickly, and you just have to keep an eye on the markets. Obviously, like things can change quickly, but they still at the same time happen over a long period of time, I would say. You just have to pay attention to the markets. Baseball is just like fantasy baseball, just like fantasy or baseball sports betting. It's something you can't just like set it and like hope your lineup's going to be good at the end of April. Like, oh, how am I in the bottom of my standings right now because I only set my lineup once a week, sort of thing. It's really something you have to keep your finger on the pulse of because of the way baseball is, and it is the best sport for betting to me because of the reliance on statistics and how we get to use them as bettors. And I really think there's opportunities to be had in these futures markets if you take the time to actually look at the way the odds are moving.
And speaking about those statistics, like we talked about all of our MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year picks. We talked about how we're going to operate the futures market, but how do you operate the market on a day-to-day basis, right? For example, you have Yusei Kikuchi at over 4.5 strikeouts. You might take the Blue Jays money line later. You never know. What stats are you looking at most prevalently that you're going to put those towards maybe a prop, or maybe it's different statistics that you look towards in a full game?
Baseball's so crazy because there's so many ways to bet a baseball game. And like I said, it's a long season. So early on, I look at things like it seems silly, but I'll look at who's hot to start the season and who's cold to start the season, sort of thing. Because before we get us nerds, we get all that data we crave, to actually bet on these games. So early on, you have to look at things like hot streaks, I would say, and then pitcher splits, I'd say, because teams in the American League East will have history against the majority of lineups they've played, sort of thing. Like you can get good data from a Ryu start because he's faced the Yankees X amount of times in the last 2 years. And I also like looking at how they do at certain ballparks because pitchers are weird freaks who like this certain mounds feel better to them than other mounds, and you can go find all that information out there as well. And like there's a thing to pitching in certain ballparks and just liking the feel of the dirt in one place as opposed to another. That's a real thing. But as the season wears on, I'd say I start my day by looking at starting pitching matchups. It's starting pitching first and foremost, because that's the easiest thing to handicap. I've gotten away a bit from ERA as have a lot of bettors. Now it's expected FIP, and I still use WHIP quite often as well when it comes to my handicapping. And then we'll see the matchup, and if it's a pretty good, decent matchup, I'm looking at a lot of 5-inning unders early on in the season. I've become obsessed with 5-inning unders, and it also just allows me to eliminate a variable, which is bullpens, which we early on in the season, a bullpen, like we know the Yankees usually have a decent bullpen, or at least that's the narrative surrounding them right now. But like for 20 of the other teams, we aren't going to know what their bullpens are going to be like for maybe 2 months, 60 games worth of baseball, sort of thing. So it can be a real crapshoot early on, and I really enjoy looking at 5-inning bets that way. And then then obviously there's things like batter versus pitcher matchup splits that you can look at, and then you take those in, like who's hitting well against lefties, who's hitting hot right now, and who's and then you can take that into I look at a lot of total bases props because you can find a lot of plus money value there. So I enjoy betting like someone to go over total bases of 1.5, especially if you're getting at like plus 110 or plus 120, which is of course if you're betting $100 at plus 120, that returns 120, as opposed to if it was minus 110, 100, you need to wager $110 to win 100, sort of thing. So The total basis props I find are another great place to find additional value. For the strikeouts tonight, it was with Kikuchi. Obviously, this will be tomorrow, so we're going to miss this. But when I made the wager on the Kikuchi overs, he averages 9.3 strikeouts per 9 innings last season. So that's a little over 1 strikeout an inning, and he's facing a Yankees team that is free swinging, I'll say right now, and they're striking out about 9.5 times per game right now, and that ranks 24th in the majors. So if Kikuchi is able to locate that fastball enough and pitches about 5 innings, the number of it tells me that he should go over the number of 4.5, and I'm willing to pay. It's about -120, -130, and I'm willing to pay the juice on that.
Well, as a Yankee fan, I hope he gives up 8 runs, but he gets 5 strikeouts for your liking. Well, we just got to thank Andrew Caley, senior betting analyst at covers.com. Andrew, before we say goodbye, give us your best futures bet for the 2022 MLB season. And of course, plug anything you need.
I'm still going to say it's the Toronto Blue Jays to win the American League East at +180. This is their year. Finally, we've waited all this time, and they're gonna do it, and they're gonna win the pennant as well. It's gonna be wonderful. I can't wait. But no, really, on top of that, I also like the Brewers to win the World Series at +1700. I really like what they did, bringing in guys like Andrew McCutchen and Hunter Renfroe to bring some right-handed bats into the lineup, balance that lineup out a little bit more. Obviously, like, we made fun of them for not being able to hit the Orioles long season, though, and I think that those 2 pitchers at the top of the rotation are the type of guys that you need to win a World Series. And then when you combine it, I think they made a smart move not moving Josh Hader, and you combine him with Devin Williams, who just is ridiculous right now. That's to hand the ball to those 2 guys. You essentially have 2 closers back there. They could be a real problem come the playoffs.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. And we'll definitely have you back on Not Gambling Advice to take a look at how those bets are doing close to the season. But we do thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.